Strange Brew Podcast, Season 1, Episode 315. Big news yesterday. Not shocking news, but big news from Badger football. Luke Fickell is going to be back as the head coach in 2026. We speculated about that a few podcasts ago, or maybe even a few weeks ago. It just kind of felt like that's the direction we're heading in. Chris McInstosh yesterday did a sit-down with Jesse Temple of Badger Connect and officially gave him the full vote of confidence. We had the letter, we had the McInstosh letter, we had the vote of confidence after the Maryland loss. Now we got the official statement of he is going to be back in 2026. I want to air you a part of that because I think you'll be very interested to hear that next year, wins and losses might not be the measure of progress. They might not be the measure of success in a sport where winning and losing is the primary objective. So we are going to play you some of that. I just listened to about 20 minutes. McInstosh right now is doing a live interview on Wilde and Tausch on ESPN Milwaukee and ESPN Madison. It's an interesting spin he's kind of putting on this, but that was the big story on Thursday. We're going to play a bunch of that audio. We're going to talk about what has felt like an inevitable conversation here for a few weeks as the Badgers get set for number 24 Washington at Camp Randall tomorrow. We'll talk about the Packers, the official news on Tucker Kraft, and the commentary from Romeo Dobbs about Tucker Kraft. R.I.P. Tucker Kraft. He is done for the year. Packers had Asante Samuel Jr. in town yesterday, maybe trying to bolster that secondary a bit with a veteran presence. He left town without a deal. Doesn't mean one can't happen. He's meeting with other teams here coming up today. But we'll discuss that, and we'll get more into Packers-Eagles on Monday because of Monday Night Football. But a few things we'll go over. Pretty encouraging injury report, actually, yesterday for the Green and Gold. We'll talk about the Bucs. They had an interesting week. A game winner from Giannis on Monday. What a shot. A fadeaway mid-range jumper from Giannis to win it in Indiana. And a night where Miles Turner returned to Indiana and got booed. He seemed very hurt by that. Giannis seemed angry about it. Then the Bucs went to Toronto and had a scheduled loss. We're going to talk about that too. They've got the Bulls at Fiserv Forum tonight. It is the first night of NBA Cup qualifying for the defending NBA Cup champions. You forget that, but the Bucs are. They've got the crazy green NBA Cup floor at Fiserv Forum tonight. We'll go over that as well and make some picks at the end. Let's go.
On the ground, a chance here. Durham to Hardy to first. Hit time! Yes! The Brewers win! Yes!
Here comes Melvin to the 25, to the 20, Gordon 15, 10, 5, touchdown! Wisconsin! Record-breaking run!
Morgan, a smash up the middle, face hit to center. Here comes Gomez around third. A throw and the Brewers win!
Here's the snap. He looks, he throws, it's intercepted. And there is your Super Bowl dagger.
Booker the drive, gets inside, leans in, knocked away and stolen by Holiday. Phoenix has to foul on a pinnacle ball, throws it down.
Swinging fly ball in the right center. Broxton is there, and they're the champions. They have done it.
It's been a 50-year journey. Wisconsin, we've got a room at the top of the world tonight. The Milwaukee Bucks are NBA champions.
All right, let's hop right into it. The biggest news yesterday at about 4 o'clock, we had Jesse Temple of Badger Connect. Great hair. Great set of lettuce on that guy. He sat down with Chris McInstosh, and they went over the plan for Badger football for next year. There's been a lot of conversation among Badger fans, obviously, over the course of a dismal year of Badger football, about what is this program going to do? Are they going to make a move and bring somebody else in? It is clear at this point that Luke Fickell and his staff, that has not worked to this point. We are in year 3. He has a 15-19 record. They're 2-6. They've lost 6 games in a row. They're getting their doors blown off. They can barely score. You're getting fire Fickell chance at Camp Randall. The place looks half empty basically by halftime, and in some games this year, maybe even a quarter full by the end of it. By the time you get to the 5th quarter, there might be 10,000 people at Camp Randall. So interest in the product, as the product has depreciated, is diminishing as well, and that means you would think the university, if you don't have a premier football program generating millions and millions of dollars, they're going to see some bottom line impact there too. It felt likely before we got the first of now 3 votes of confidence from Chris McInstosh as it relates to Luke Fickell. They all say 1 vote of confidence is bad. What does 3 votes of confidence mean? But it felt like after the first and then the second and the letter to fans, and now, of course, yesterday confirms it felt like that they were going to give, or McInstosh was going to give Fickell another chance next year. One more chance? I don't know. But at least give him next year. And remember, we've talked about on this podcast, because of the positioning of what McInstosh has been saying and what Fickell has been saying, remember, we've been over. We don't know what's happening directly behind them with the Chancellor Munkin. Is that how you say her name? With the Chancellor, with the big donors like Ted Kellner, who came out a few weeks ago in support of Fickell. I said, this either feels like these two guys, McInstosh and Fickell, are operating as if they know they're gone, or they're operating as if they know they're staying. And the X factor in whatever choose-your-own-adventure narrative we go in there, the X factor is something that we did not know until yesterday. What is the support level of the Chancellor, of the administration, and of the biggest donors like a Kellner behind the scenes? Are they in support of them, or are they not? Because if they're not, this is a last gasp to try to save their jobs. If they are in support of them, then both are going to be back in 2026. And we got our answer yesterday that the behind-the-scenes folks, they obviously support this, or at least for one more year support it. Now, I am not shocked that McInstosh, and we've talked about this, I don't think anybody is shocked that McInstosh is attaching himself at the hip to Fickell, because they are attached. They are binded together. This was the biggest decision McInstosh made so far in his tenure, a 4-year tenure as athletic director. Barry retired in 2021. The biggest thing that McInstosh has done was the splash hire of Luke Fickell. And when you look around the athletic department, I think we've been over this too. When you look at that 4-year window from 21 to 25, you've got to ask yourself not only where the football program is at, which is in the dumps, but has anything gotten better under McInstosh? Has anything gotten better in the athletic department? And when you look around, it's hard to say anything has. The football team has imploded on itself. The basketball program has been solid and continues to be solid. Man, how about the Greg Gard glow up? It's interesting. I talked about this on the B93 Morning Show. If you've ever been at a workplace where you've been on the bottom rung, where maybe you did a few things wrong, or maybe your ratings periods weren't so good, not talking about anybody in particular, but maybe you've been, let's say, at a radio station cluster, maybe at one point in your career, you were kind of the bottom of the barrel, and everybody's kind of looking at that person saying, should they have a job here? And that was Greg Gard. Even though Greg Gard would put together 20-plus win years, make the tournament, didn't see the success in March, but overall it's been a winning product since Greg Gard took over for Bo Ryan in 2016. And despite that, because of the March failings and the late February March failings, you heard a lot of hashtag fire Gard. Well, now, Fickell and the football program have been so bad that even Greg Gard remaining steady has elevated him to like the crown jewel of the athletic department. So that's like if you were if you worked in radio and had a really bad ratings period or whatever early in your career, and eyes were on you, but then all of a sudden somebody else did way worse. Even if you just remain steady, things start to look much better for you. Greg Gard is the highly, no pun intended, highest regarded, I think, coach right now just about in the athletic department, and he's just been steady Eddie. But the basketball program has been fine and good, but that was already in place before he got there. The women's hockey program is the premier women's hockey program in the country. That was already in place before he got there. I think men's hockey has seen somewhat of a resurrection the last 3 or 4 years, so maybe you can give him credit for that. Volleyball's been really good, but again, that was in place before he got there. So the one thing that McInstosh has really put his stamp on is the football program and hiring Luke Fickell, and it has been a failure to this point, and probably will continue to be. So he has to attach himself to Luke Fickell, because if Fickell gets fired, McInstosh is likely fired, because you're not going to let McInstosh hire the next guy if he was the guy that hired Fickell. So they are on the Titanic together. They are on the deck of the Titanic, and they know that, and McInstosh knows that. They are on the deck of the Titanic, or the Andrea Doria.
According to this, it took 10 hours. It eased into the water like an old man into a nice warm bath, no offense.
So they are tied together, and McInstosh knows that. So it's not stunning that he is in support of Fickell, but we got our answer to the larger question of, is the administration, are the big donors in support of these guys? And it seems to, at least right now, be unequivocally yes for at least one more year. Now, this made me laugh out loud. There's all kinds of clips from the sit-down with Jesse Temple, but this made me laugh out loud. A very fair question from Jesse Temple. And we'll play it here, but essentially he says, okay, so what was it? 7-5 in year one, made a bowl game. 6-6 or 6-6 in year one, 5-7 in year two. Saw the streak of 22 straight bowl games snapped. And this year, they're going to be lucky to get one more win. And maybe it feels unlikely that's even going to happen. This feels like a 2-10 season where you could make a case that the Badgers are even either the 17th or 18th best team in an 18-team conference. So the question is, okay, if despite this being a dumpster fire, if you are going to give yourself and Luke Fickell another year in 2026, how do we mark success? I mean, what is the level we're trying to clear here to give him another year in 2027? Or what is the sign that, okay, things are spinning back in the right direction? You'll be happy to know that from Chris McIntosh's perspective, wins and losses in a sport may not necessarily show the progress they're looking for.
When you hired Luke about championship-level expectations at Wisconsin for the football program, as you look forward to year 4, what does success look like to you? How will you determine whether this is a path that is working?
Yeah. I think, the priority for me is to continue to grow the program in a way that puts us in a position to achieve those expectations. That comes in many forms. It's not limited to wins and losses. There are so many factors that contribute to that, and that's where my priority is.
Name any of them.
I think, just to reiterate, I am excited about where the program can go. There is a tremendous amount of work that needs to be done. It will not be easy. It will require all of us. This is why I'm so grateful for the support that Chancellor Mnuchin has given us. The level of alignment that we have right now is at a level that I've not experienced here in my time at Wisconsin. It will require our fans and our supporters and our donors to be part of it, but it's for those reasons that I'm optimistic about our chances.
Name any measure of success outside of a win or a loss that would let us know that next year things are heading back in the right direction. I did have to laugh. It's a savvy move. It's a PR move. It's a savvy move because now if they come out next year and go 3-8 or whatever, 3-9 or 4-7 or 4-8, it would maybe be a few more wins than this past year. And you would think with the schedule, which we've talked about, the schedule is much softer next year. A lot can happen. Transfer portal, NIL, a lot can change with your strength of schedule from where we are now or what we think it's going to be for next year, where we are on November 7th and where we're going to be when the season actually kicks off in September of next year. But you would think there's going to be a few more wins on that schedule next year. But luckily, we don't have to worry about that because wins and losses are not necessarily a measure of whether we're making progress as a program. So now, if they win 3 games or 4 games and people are even more upset next year, he can go back and say, look, I told you, wins are not a measure of whether or not we're headed back in the right direction. There are other factors. What are they? Well, I couldn't tell you that. I can't tell you my sources. I can't tell you what those factors would be. I did have to tip my cap to that. That's just giving himself an escape hatch if things go really bad next year, too. Is the chancellor aware? That's the question. That's my question. Is the chancellor aware of the impact of the ripple effect on the finances of the university if the football program is in the toilet? I know you're going to get people, when you talk about a college and college athletics, you are always going to have the conversation of, well, it's an institution of higher learning anyway, John, and what does it matter if the football program is good? The football program is, I'm assuming, the number one generator outside of tuition of revenue within the entire system. So if you want to hire a new professor, if you want to build a new building, which they've been doing plenty of, if you want to invest any money, a lot of that is coming from the athletic department, money that is being generated by the football program. And it doesn't feel to me, now this is me maybe judging a book by its cover or judging a book without enough information, but it doesn't feel like the chancellor quite understands that if this is a 2 or 3 win football program and the stadium's half full, that is going to have a major impact on other stuff that you want to do. It's going to have a major impact on other athletic endeavors, which do feed off of the money that the football program makes. But it's also going to have an impact on things you may want to do at the university, buildings you may want to build, renovations you might want to put together, whatever, all that stuff. A lot of that money comes from advertising dollars, marketing dollars. When you have 80,000 people in the stadium on Saturday, all that, buying $10 or $11 beers. If that starts to dry up, that is going to have a major ripple effect. And I'm not quite sure the administration or the people not necessarily locked into football understand that portion of it. But yeah, wins and losses are not necessarily a sign. You know what? Give me the half-baked for Chris McInstosh after saying wins and losses aren't a measure of progress. Boo this man.
Boo this man.
Boo him. Boo! Boo this man.
This man.
A great movie. So I did notice, and I didn't think of it the first time I played that clip before we went on the air here with the podcast. As we were getting set to record, I was listening to out of ESPN, Madison and Milwaukee, a show I listen to at least one segment to basically every day at 9 o'clock, Wilde and Tausch on ESPN Milwaukee, ESPN Madison. And it's an interesting show. It's a Packer-heavy show, but Wilde is a Badger alum and one of the best Packer beat reporters in the state. Tausch is obviously a Badger alum and Packer alum, and he is now the color analyst on the radio broadcast with Matt LePay. So both of them are firmly tied to the university, and they had Mac on today. And I listened to about 20 minutes of it, and now that I listened back to that 1-minute clip I just aired you, it sounds like he was kind of laying the groundwork in that interview with Jesse Temple for what he is going to be doing and what he did do on Wilde and Tausch today. He is almost approaching this. Like, if you listen to the end of this, they are almost approaching next year like it's year one with Fickell. I get that vibe, and I got that vibe on the re-listen of what we just aired you. I'll play it again. I'll play you 20 seconds of it at the end. And then when I listened to 15 minutes of his interview on Wilde and Tausch, that seems to be the positioning of this.
There is a tremendous amount of work that needs to be done. It will not be easy. It will require all of us. This is why I'm so grateful for the support that Chancellor Mnuchin has given us. The level of alignment that we have right now is at a level that I've not experienced here in my time at Wisconsin. It will require our fans and our supporters and our donors to be part of it, but it's for those reasons that I'm optimistic about our chances.
It almost sounds like they're talking about a new coach, doesn't it? It almost sounds like he's talking about after a 3 or 4 year bad period of football, we fired the head coach, we've got a new coach coming in, we understand that support is going to be low right now, but we need you, we need your money, we need you at the game. It almost sounds like, are they going to do an introductory press conference for Luke Fickell? Because I would laugh at that. I actually think that would be a sneaky genius move where you could poke some fun at yourself, because that's what that sounded like. And then the 15 minutes I listened to on Wilde and Tausch, every question, and there were a lot of softball questions. I thought there were some fair questions, but it is sort of state media. Like, I'm interested in what Wilde and Tausch's perspective is on the program, but you also have to factor in what we just said. Tauscher works for the university as the color analyst and loves the program. And even though Wilde doesn't work for them, he's an alum there. And there's a reason that McInstosh decided to go on that radio program and no other one. If he would have gone on Strange Brew, I would have pulled a Michael Scott on this guy.
Who do you think you are?
That would have been my first question. Who do you think you are?
Toby. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
I'm Chris. Second question.
What gives you the right?
That would have been the interview here. But they lobbed him, for the most part, softball questions. But as I'm listening to that and I'm re-listening to what we just aired, it really does feel like they're saying, look, this 3-year run has been bad. It has been bad in terms of win-loss, even though it doesn't matter. It has been bad in terms of support now, clearly, this year. We don't have enough money, which I do believe, by the way. There are other things in play here. This isn't all just on Fickell, but it's mostly on Fickell and mostly on McInstosh. Like we've been over, one big problem that they've had in the Fickell era is every quarterback that they've brought in from the transfer portal has gotten hurt. Mordecai, Van Dyke, and this year, Billy Edwards. Don't expect to see Billy Edwards at all this year, by the way. We're going to talk more about that when we talk about the Washington game in a minute. But it is my understanding now from sources I have within the university, my understanding now is that Billy Edwards is just trying to preserve his eligibility, and he is not going to play again this year. I think he is healthy, but I think at this point he sees the writing on the wall. This is a 2-win team. It's probably not going to win another game with or without him, and if he plays a certain amount of games, he burns up his last year of eligibility. So my understanding is that Billy Edwards is now healthy enough to play, but he wants to preserve that 5th year of eligibility so he can go somewhere else at the end of the year. I don't think he's staying here, but so he could go somewhere else and still use that last year of eligibility. If he plays, he burns that up and his college career is done. That is my understanding. But that has been a problem. I mean, I will give Luke Fickell the grace of that and say that every quarterback, every preferred quarterback that they have brought in has been hurt in all 3 of his years here. That is not helpful. I do not think Billy Edwards makes this record any better. I still think they're on a 6-game losing streak. I still think they're 2-6. Maybe some of the games are closer. Maybe you're not getting shut out in some of the games. But I don't think the end result to this point this year is any different. Now, maybe you could make a case last year. I think we did make that case at the end of the year. They finished 5-7 last year. At one point, they were 5-2, which feels like an eon ago. But I do think if you had Tyler Van Dyke healthy all year last year, you'd probably win one more game and keep the bowl streak alive at the very minimum. And who knows? Mordecai played half the year in year 1. They won 6 games. They barely were bowl eligible. Maybe they do get to a 7th win if Mordecai can play the whole way. But that has been a problem. I do believe, and they've been hammering this home with the letter that McInstosh sent out and in all the media he's doing today, I do believe the university was ill-prepared for the amount of money they would need in the NIL era to compete and bring in 4 stars and 5 stars. And even though Fickell got a lot of those transfers in year 1, I just don't think they were ready for that. And that's been a point he's been hammering home on his media tour here, that we need money. We need your money. We need your support and your money, primarily your money. If you want to support us, great, outside of the money, but we do need your money. Those 2 things are also playing into what we've seen so far through 2.5 years of Fickell, and will be 3 years in the books here in about 3 or 4 weeks. But at the end of the day, that makes up to me maybe 20% or 25% of the blame. Most of it still lays at the feet of the coaches, the coaching staff, the decision to hire Phil Longo, which was obviously an abject disaster. And now they've kind of gone in a different direction with Jeff Grimes and found a bigger balance, but that was a waste of 2 years trying to go dairy raid and trying to go 4 or 5 wide at the University of Wisconsin. That was a big problem. So there are other things in play here. Another one of them that Tausch did bring up, I'll give him this. He did bring this up point blank to McInstosh this morning. There has been a lot of conversation among Badger alum, and one of them, Brad Nortman, who is also on ESPN Madison and Wisconsin on the afternoon show. J.J. Watt has kind of brought this up too. Let me play you another clip real quick. This was J.J. Watt on McAfee this week. This just shows you that the relationship between Fickell and the high-level alumni and the relationship between Fickell and the high school football coaches in the state is not good, because this is
you own Burnley and Espanol. Why don't you own the Wisconsin football team? I see Willie Compton giving speeches and donating his time and everything over there in Nebraska. You're both red. You're both in the middle of America. You're potentially competing for the same type of players. Feels like you got to step up and maybe sell one of those soccer teams so you can invest directly into Luke Fickell's pockets in that team. Have you thought about that?
We need to play better. Yes, we do. Significantly.
Why don't you go give a speech?
I did. Didn't work.
Oh, no. I'm so sorry.
Right.
Let's move along.
Just doesn't feel like, if I had to pick one problem with Fickell outside of the Longo hire, which I think is one of the biggest mistakes and mess-ups of his short tenure so far, it does not seem like I said, there does not seem like there's a great relationship between Luke Fickell and the star alumni of this program, which I think you need in the NIL era, in any era, but especially in the NIL era. If some of these top recruits you're targeting, and you have the money to get them, are getting phone calls from J.J. Watt, future Hall of Famer in the NFL, from Jonathan Taylor, who's going to be in the MVP conversation, from Mark Tauscher, from guys that have had success at the program, have had success at the NFL level. If you can start to utilize that, I think it becomes a more tantalizing program to 18-year-old, 19-year-old, 4-star, 5-star recruits. Clearly, you've got to get the money thing organized first, but it doesn't seem like the star power of this university, of that football program and their alumni, is being utilized at all. Like, there's no relationship, it feels like right now, between Luke Fickell and J.J. Watt, arguably the biggest star to come out of the Wisconsin football program. It also sounds like, per Brad Nortman and some of the other guys that have radio shows now, it does not sound like Luke Fickell has done any of the legwork of making his way around the state of Wisconsin, shaking hands, introducing himself to high-level high school coaches that produce 3, 4, 5-star guys. You are not seeing a lot of in-state recruits stay in the state, and one of the reasons for that is the root system seems to have eroded from the Badger football program to the star high school players and the big high school football programs in the state. Barry Alvarez will tell you, and I think he has. He'll tell anyone. Give him a couple of cocktails, he'll tell you. He will say that when he came in following the Don Morton era, which is what the Fickell era is being compared to, when he came in, one of the first things he had to do was do a PR tour, go around the state, introduce himself, which was not happening for 20 years prior, introduce himself to all of the high school football coaches in the state, or as many as he could, shake hands, get a dinner with them, get a cocktail with them, shoot craps with them, whatever Barry was doing in the early 90s, doing lines of coke, I don't know. A lot of stuff was going on in the early to mid 90s that was off the books or on the books, literally. But he did that. And he laid the groundwork in the state, knowing that at some point he was going to have to get outside of the state and target some of the biggest recruits nationally. But the foundational block of Barry, of even Brett Bielema, not Gary Anderson, but he was only here for 2 years, but the foundation certainly of Chris, who is a Wisconsin guy, the foundation of this program when they were winning 7, 8, 9, 10-plus games every year and making Rose Bowls and all that kind of stuff, was that you could rely on, if we have a 3-star recruit in state, it doesn't mean he has to be a sexy 4-star, 5-star, ultra-talented person. If you had a 3-star offensive lineman in the state, he was going to Wisconsin. There was no question about that. Offensive line, you. Tight end, you. Running back, you. The 3, 4-star in-state players were going to prioritize going to Wisconsin. It does not sound like that has happened, and that's because that connection between the Badger football program that is tied together by the head coach and his coaching staff, it feels like that has totally frayed or completely broken at this point. So that was a part of the McInstosh conversation on the Wilde and Tausch interview, too, admitting that, okay, we need to get back to that. We need to do a bus tour at some point after the year is done, and Luke's going to have to press the flesh and introduce himself. Barry talked about that as it relates to Luke Fickell, too. That's one of the criticisms of Barry to Luke Fickell, is that it just hasn't happened that way, and in-state events that were scheduled have been canceled. He's got to do that. You've got to be able to rely on the star talent in your state, or at least the middle of the road to slightly above star talent. You have to know and expect that they are going to come to Wisconsin. Are the 5 stars, are the superstar athletes from this state necessarily going to go to Wisconsin? No, because they're going to have offers from Alabama. They're going to have SEC offers, things like that. But the 3-star guys in the state, you've got to have a 70% hit rate on that. That has to be the backing that you have year in, year out that you can count on, and it feels like that has gone by the wayside. So McInstosh talked about that, but that's all in the positioning of we are essentially shaking the Etch-a-Sketch board clean here, and they are asking us as a fan base to basically forget about the first 3 years of the Fickell era and hone in on a fresh start next year. But they're almost positioning it as year one, Luke Fickell 2.0. Year one, Luke Fickell 2.0. We're going to try this again, and if we can't get it going this time, then I don't think there's another continue. Continue, yes, no. I don't think there's another quarter to put in the arcade machine if it's bad after next year. But it almost feels like that's how they're positioning things of this is a new guy. This is a new head coach with the exact same name. It's Fickell. It's one of those things where they're making it seem like this is going to be a fresh start with the exact same head coach as the last 3 years. But they've got to do things a lot differently. They've got to get more money, which I don't know how you're going to do now. That's the biggest stumbling block now is how, after how bad this has gone, how do you get the casual fan, the middle-of-the-road fan to get back in the stadium, to spend money and pour money back into the program with what we're seeing this year? That's going to be their biggest obstacle or hurdle that they're going to have to clear, and I don't know that they can do it. But Luke Fickell will be back in 2026, and McInstosh is doing quite a media tour here today, trying to spin things in the right direction. Now, they've got Washington at Camp Randall tomorrow. I'm actually driving to Madison Saturday morning, and my buddies and I've got a lot of friends that live in Madison still, Badger alumni. We are going to do what Barry Alvarez told us to do on his radio show after the Badgers got their doors blown off by Maryland, crab cakes and football, after they got blown out, and that was the first game this year, and were they 2-1 going into that game? That feels like a long time ago. They were 2-1. They were 2-0. They were 2-1 going into that game, got obliterated by Maryland, and that was the first time you heard the Fire Fickell chants and the loud booing at Camp Randall and the stadium emptying out well before it was over. And then remember, we played on the podcast, Barry on his radio show on Monday nights on ESPN Madison called us spoiled rotten. He said it was despicable, and then he said, if you don't want to be there, if you don't want to be at Camp Randall, go boo at a bar.
That really upsets me.
Hold on. Here we go.
That person sitting next to me, boom, I tell, get your ass out of here. We don't need you in here. You don't want to watch this? Go someplace else. Go boo in a bar.
That's what we're doing.
You're not a fan. If I'm a person sitting next to me, boom, I tell, get your ass out of here.
Done.
We don't need you in
See
here.
ya.
You don't want to watch this? Go someplace else. Go boo in a bar.
That's our plan. We are going to go boo at several bars and watch the game on Saturday afternoon. Although I did look today, if we wanted to, if you go to StubHub right now for a 3:30 kickoff in Madison in November with the top 25 team coming to the stadium, do you know how much tickets are right now on StubHub? $11. And I'm not talking about in the last row of the stadium on the end zone. I'm talking about you can get tickets on the 30 or 40 yard line for like $10. So while the plan is to boo at a bar, I think we're going to stick to that. If you have a couple and we hop on StubHub and tickets are $3 at the 50 yard line, and who cares when you get in, who cares? We can go for a quarter. You go for jump around and leave and go right back to the bar for that price. I'm not totally ruling that out. But number 24, Washington at Camp Randall on Saturday. They are 6-2. Badgers are 2-6. The biggest question in terms of the game itself. Now, this would be big. You know Chris McInstosh. If he has any prayer equity right now, he is burning it up on wanting a win Saturday. Because with the hoopla coming out of his sit-down interview with Jesse Temple on Thursday, confirming that Fickell is back, and now the radio tour he's doing today, if you read any of the comment sections, there is nobody with a lower Q rating right now in the university with the football program than Luke Fickell and Chris McInstosh. So now that he's confirmed coming back, it would be massive for them, for McInstosh and Fickell, if they could go out on Saturday and beat a top 25 team. With the endorsement that McInstosh gave Fickell, that would be huge. I don't see it happening. But the biggest question in terms of the game itself to me is, who is the quarterback going to be on Saturday? Like I just went over, Billy Edwards is healthy, I think, enough. You're coming off of a double bye, or your second bye of the year. It feels like he should be the guy, but he's not going to want to do that. So maybe there's a chance he plays. I don't think so, though. Danny O'Neal, like we talked about, my understanding is that some things have happened behind the scenes there where he's just not going to be the guy. But at this point, maybe. You cannot roll Hunter Simmons out there. You simply cannot throw out Hunter Simmons, although I think there's a chance that happens. The one that I want to see, because if Billy Edwards isn't going to play, it doesn't even matter anymore. You're not. I mean, I guess in theory you could win out and be bowl eligible. That's not going to happen. Even if you were to come up with a miraculous win on Saturday, you are not going to number 2 Indiana tomorrow or next week and winning there. In fact, I have very deep-rooted fears in that game that the Badgers could lose by 70 or 80 in that game. And I'm not even remotely joking. The Badger defense has been better this year. Their front seven has been better. And I know we kind of talked about that with the Ohio State game. Felt like you could lose that game by 60 or 70, and you only lost 34-0 in that game against Ohio State. And the defense played reasonably well in the rain at Oregon, a top 10 team. But Curt Cignetti, who is in year 2 at Indiana, and he is cocky, and he is brash, and he will say basically anything. And I think that's one of the problems this Badger football program has right now. You're in year 3 with Luke Fickell, and this is only getting worse and worse and worse. And Chris McInstosh and the administration may be throwing up their hands and saying, well, what do you want us to do? We didn't have enough money and recruits and blah, 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 all these excuses. And you only have to look to Indiana. Indiana, which was a basketball school and is still a basketball school as their primary for decades and almost a century. They've been a basketball school. And the football program is one of the worst football programs in the Big Ten. Like you could count on from up until Cignetti got there last year, you could almost count on that was going to be a win. If you had Indiana on your schedule, that was going to be a win. They were a 3-9 team, a 2-10 team every single year. Well, Cignetti goes there from James Madison. Cignetti goes there last year. They go 11-1, soft schedule, but 11-1, and they make the college football playoff. So that hurts the Badgers, I think, when you've got an angry, frustrated Badger fan base looking at this team getting worse and worse every year under Fickell, and the administration maybe saying, well, what do you want us to do? That. We want you to do that. Curt Cignetti went to a basketball-dominant school and turned them into a college football powerhouse. It didn't even take a year. One off season he did it. And they're the number 2 team in the country this year, and they're going to be in the college football playoff this year, and they're going to be likely in the Big Ten title game against Ohio State this year. And they're going to have a chance to win a national championship. They have like the 3rd best odds. And up until 18 months ago, that football program was moribund. I mean, that was the last thing that anybody cared about at Indiana. The last thing that anybody cared about at Indiana. So I think that hurts the Badgers too, and it hurts Luke Fickell and the whole optics of this deal when you look at a program like that and what Cignetti's done in Indiana. But he is cutthroat. Whereas I do feel like Ohio State kind of throttled down in that game a few weeks ago where they probably could have won by 40 or 50, but whatever, put some backups in. Curt Cignetti's not going to do that. The Badgers in 2010, now I know Cignetti wasn't there in 2010, but the Badgers in 2010, you may remember, scored 83 points. The football team scored 83 points in a win at Indiana. I remember vividly, I was calling a different college football game, and I was asking my buddies, this was like pre-ESPN app, I was asking my buddies to text me updates of the game, and I actually thought my friends were lying to me because they kept on texting me, and the Badgers scored 50, and they scored 60, and they scored 70, and they scored 83, and I thought this has to be a lie. And then I finally got home and loaded up my laptop and said, I'll be damned, they won 83-20. So even though Cignetti was nowhere near that program in 2010 when that happened, you bet your ass that heading into that game, Cignetti is going to be playing that for these players, his players, and say, look what this team did to you 15 years ago. Look what that program did to this program, and he is going to be out for blood. So even if in a miracle you win this weekend, there's no chance you're going next weekend and giving yourself a chance still at a 500 year. But we'll see who the starting quarterback is on Saturday. I want Carter Smith. That's who I want. That was the big name they got this offseason. A 4-star quarterback recruit. I think at this point, you use that as some kind of designation, but we learned with Graham Mertz, who I think was a 5-star, who ultimately did not have a bad college career. And now you look back at it, we soured on Graham Mertz over the second and third year of his time at Wisconsin. We'd kill for Graham Mertz right now. That's where we're at. Graham Mertz would be a visible upgrade over anything we've trotted out there, certainly over Hunter Simmons. So I know sometimes we have the star ratings, the 4-star, the 5-star, and you kind of roll your eyes at it, but that was the guy. He was a dual-threat quarterback, 4-star recruit. We haven't seen him at all this year. If Billy Edwards is not going to play because he wants to maintain his eligibility for a different program next year, if Danny O'Neil said something behind the scenes and they don't want to put him in the game, you can't put Hunter Simmons out there. Put the freshman quarterback out there. You just came off of a second bye week. He had 13 days to prepare for this game. If he's bad, who cares? You've been so bad. Hunter Simmons was 0 for 13 passing at halftime at Oregon, and they were only down by a touchdown. They were only down 7-0. It can't possibly be worse than that. Even if he's 2 for 13 or 1 for, that would have been an improvement. So let's see. You had an extra week of prep. Even if he's underwater, even if he's in the deep end, he's not ready for it yet. Who cares? Let's see if this guy has any chance of being a starting quarterback next year, which we now know Fickell's back. So that would be his guy, you would think, as a sophomore. Let's see the 4-star freshman quarterback, if he can get anything going offensively. What do you have to lose at this point? Badgers are 11-point underdogs with number 24 Washington at Camp Randall. I am showing great restraint not betting Washington minus 11 in that game. I do think the Badger defense might help keep them in it, that those two young linebackers, Posa and Catalano, who played well, freshman linebackers at Oregon, maybe they can continue and give you some hope. The front seven, like I said, the defensive front seven has been a little better. And maybe they can keep Washington at bay a little bit and you can give yourself a puncher's chance. But to win a game, you're going to have to score. When's the last time this team scored double-digit points? Good question, John. Let's look it up. I can't even tell you. Michigan, right? They scored 10 in that game. I mean, if you're going to win this game, even with the defense being better and the front seven being better, I don't think you're holding Washington to under 17 or 20 points. So how are you going to score 21 points? How is this team? This team has not scored 21 points in the last 4 weeks combined. They've scored 17 points since kickoff at Michigan on Saturday, October 4th. So if you're going to win a game, you're going to have to score 20, right? I mean, I think you're going to have to score 17 or 20 at the very minimum. I just don't know how you do that if you trot out the same quarterbacks you have been. You may as well see what the freshman quarterback has. So you got Washington this week at number 2 Indiana. Illinois is not ranked anymore. I mean, maybe you have a chance there on the 22nd, and then you're at Minnesota for Paul Bunyan's Axe. I was talking to somebody in the building here before we clicked record on this podcast, and talking about Fickell and him being back, and this is just doesn't feel like the right move. I did say I wonder still, even though McInstosh gave his vote of support, even though he said Fickell's going to be back in 2026, and it seems like the administration has the back of these two guys, if you get blown out this weekend, if you get blown out by Washington 37-0, and you lose 65-0 at Indiana, and you lose to Illinois, and then you get blown out at Minnesota in the battle for Paul Bunyan's Axe, and you put together like an Iowa effort where you lose 30-0 or 30-3 or 30-7, I don't know. Is this necessarily, is it totally cast? Is the die totally cast here? If you get your ass kicked in the next 4 games, and the culmination is getting blown out for a second straight year in the Paul Bunyan Axe game, Are we 100% sure? Are you sure? I feel like that character, what's that guy's name on that Netflix comedy sketch show? Are you sure about that? I don't know if it goes really bad these next 4 weeks and it culminates with a loss, an embarrassing blowout loss at Minnesota, which was embarrassing enough at home last year on Black Friday. If it culminates in that, is there still a chance somebody behind the scenes says, okay, we made a mistake here, let's just get rid of both of them? I don't think that's totally out of the realm. We'll see how they look this weekend, and as I said, I will be booing as loud as I can possibly boo.
The person sitting next to me, boom, I tell him, get your ass out of here. We don't need you in here. You don't want to watch this? Go someplace else. Go boo in a bar.
Consider it done. All right, well, that was the biggest sports story across the state yesterday. The endorsement from McInstosh to Fickell, and now we get set for number 23, Washington, this weekend. 3:30 kickoff. It'll be dark by the end of the first quarter. How's that treating everybody out there on the first week after a fallback when it's dark outside at 4:30 again? All right, let's talk about the Packers. We're going to talk more about the Packers coming up on Monday because obviously Monday Night Football. We had Thursday Night Football last night. Big win for our Broncos. It was ugly. That was not a treat to watch that. Those Thursday games rarely are. Broncos were 10-point favorites at home against a 2-win Raider team, and they had to hang on for dear life there in a 10-7 win. But a win is a win, and they are now at 8 wins. They are 8-2. Remember, we need the Broncos to win 10 for the over. Huge bet on that. We need them to make the playoffs, which it looks like they're kind of on target for, and we want them to win the division at plus 185 too. So that was an ugly win, but a necessary win, at least for the over on season wins as they get to 8-2 on the year. Oh yeah, Packers and Eagles on Monday night. The biggest story early in the week was Tucker Kraft officially getting ruled out, and the confirmation of the torn ACL. His year is done. The All-Pro year, we would have had that one. Now, at least I can go back at the end of the year and say we should have had that one. We should have had one of the 5 bold predictions. But unfortunately, an injury cost him. Then Romeo Doubs on Wednesday, I think this was, gave one of the weirder interviews. Romeo Doubs, I don't want to say weird because I'm weird. I mean, we all are in some way, and especially a podcaster radio DJ. This isn't a cool guy talking to you. So we all have our peccadillos, as they say. But he has been sort of an odd guy with the media his entire career. It looks like he's either uncomfortable or doesn't want to do it or both. And remember last year he had the no-call, no-show. They had to do a wellness check on him. He got suspended for the Rams game. Seems like he's kind of back in the good graces, but his media interviews are always fascinating. I can't tell if he's being serious here or, as I put in the blog, I can't tell if he's maybe being so dry in terms of humor that we've got like a modern-day Mitch Hedberg on our hands. So they announced Kraft done for the year, and Romeo Doubs said to the Green Bay media, he's in a better place.
I wish that, just on, one of our captains or even just your worst enemy. I don't wish that on any man. And, Tucker is in a better place. But, again, you just got to... Next question, please.
I mean, it kind of sounds like he's... It almost was like an SNL
Tucker
sketch.
Is in a better place.
Prayers up.
But, again, you just got to... Next question.
I don't know. I can't make heads or tails of it, but Tucker is in a better place. R.I.P. Tucker Kraft. On the blog, I took the scene from Happy Gilmore where you've got everybody up in heaven and Lincoln and the alligator waving down on him, and then I put a screenshot of Tucker Kraft in there. And then we played I did put the old school Dust in the Wind. You're my boy, Blue. So, R.I.P. Tucker Kraft. Things really went bad. We thought it was bad with the torn ACL. He's dead. We lost him. He's dead. He'll be back next year at some point. But that was news, expected news this week. And the trade deadline was on Tuesday. Oh, I forget to get the Mike McCarthy clip up. Hold on. Mike McCarthy trade deadline. So trade deadline day was on Tuesday. As per usual, it is a very quiet day around 12:65. I forget what year this was, but this was when Mike McCarthy was the head coach. Got a birthday on Monday. Happy pre-birthday, Coach Mac. But this was in 2015 or 2016. Still Ted Thompson was the GM here. And they asked Mike McCarthy about what is the trade deadline like in Green Bay. And Mike McCarthy, speaking of unintentional comedy or intentional dry comedy, this is some of the best comedic timing I've ever seen. Not for an NFL head coach, but for a stand-up comic, anybody when they...
What's the trade deadline like around here on yesterday?
Say it again?
What's the trade deadline like around here? Is it a lot of conversation or just standard?
Is that what you guys? I thought it was next week. No? That's what it's like.
That is just amazing. What's the trade deadline like? Are you sure that's not next week? No, I'm pretty sure it's this week. That's what it's like.
standard.
Is that what I thought it was next week. No? That's what it's like.
One of the all-time moments. I kind of miss Coach Mack. You know where we are right now? We talked about this on the Monday podcast coming out of the loss. I didn't say I'm on the fire LaFleur train, but I said it is maybe time to have a conversation about the fact that we've got a coach in his 7th year and some of the same issues year in, year out, even though he's winning a ton of games, some of the same issues like playing down to your opponent and penalties and all that kind of stuff, they are still a problem in year 7. I have now seen Packer fans that would like to try to hire back Mike McCarthy. You think of how full circle we're at right now, where all of a sudden you talk about a Greg Gard glow up. How about a Mike McCarthy glow up? So the trade deadline was on Tuesday. I did not think they were going to do anything. I thought maybe there's a chance because of the Kraft injury, and there are some bad teams that have good tight ends. Maybe there's a chance they make some calls, and maybe they did. It does sound like Goody's on every phone call, right? We always hear that. They were in on the conversation. That's the Goody phrase. Goody is to we're in on the conversation as LaFleur is to hand up, it's on me. And maybe they were, but I thought with that injury and the timing of it, perhaps you had a chance there to be more aggressive, pick up a tight end, but they did not do that. So per Matt LaFleur in all of his press conferences this week, it is going to be Luke Musgrave. And they're just hoping that he can give them some percentage, 60% or 50% of what Tucker Kraft was giving them, give them some element of a field-stretching tight end. And John Fitzpatrick's going to have to step up. They did sign a tight end to their practice squad who's got a great name, McAllen Castles. Sounds like a Law & Order character, McAllen Castles, like MacGruber. But they did do that. But they didn't make any trades on Tuesday. Not a shock. There were 2 big trades. The Jets unloading. They trade Sauce Gardner, their 25-year-old star corner who they just gave $120 or $130 million to in the offseason. On an extension, they trade him to the Colts, who now feel like they're all in. Like, I guess you're all in with Daniel Jones. You're sitting at 7-2, and Taylor's been an MVP candidate. And now they make a trade for one of the top corners in the league, and they give up 2 first-rounders to get him. The Jets also traded defensive tackle, 27-year-old Quinnen Williams, to the Cowboys. Cowboys gave up a first and a second to get Williams. So those are 2 fairly big trades. The Jets are hoarding draft picks now. They're going to have a bunch of first-rounders and second-rounders over the next 2 or 3 years, which I'm sure they'll hit on, no doubt, and they'll be a juggernaut in the next 2 or 3 years or 4 years. I'm sure they won't waste those picks at all. But they now have a lot of extra first-rounders. Those are the 2 big trades in the NFL on Tuesday. Otherwise, Packers on the practice field yesterday, everything pushed back by a day because of the Monday night game. Pretty good injury report, though. Dontavian Wicks was back at practice. Now with Kraft down, you're going to need the full arsenal of wide receivers. Sounds like he'll be playing on Monday. Matthew Golden practiced. It sounds like he'll be okay by Monday. Aaron Banks practiced. And who was the other one? Colby Wooden, who you're going to want. He's been pretty good in place of Kenny Clark after they traded Kenny Clark as a part of the Micah Parsons deal. Wooden and Wyatt have been decent at stopping the run as the 2 defensive tackles. You didn't want to go without him, especially going into a game against Saquon Barkley. Sounds like they are on target to play on Monday. I did think an interesting comment about the kicking situation from LaFleur on Thursday. So to this point, he has been staunchly in favor of sticking with the veteran McManus. And he missed another kick on Sunday, and it turns out to be a big kick. I mean, there were a lot of opportunities to win that game on Sunday, but you did miss a kick in a game you lost by 3, and it was a 44-yarder. We're not talking about, it was a swirling wind, but we're not talking about like a 55-yarder here. So McManus, after he came in last year from the clouds and stabilized the position for the first time in 2 years and went 20 of 21 or whatever, he is now 11 of 16. We're not sure if he's fully healthy still from the quad injury. And he is feeling some pressure. Lucas Havrisik is still on this roster, is still occupying a spot on the 53-man, and he was a perfect 10 for 10 when McManus was down for 2 weeks, and he had the franchise record 61-yarder. Now, LaFleur, for the most part, has said McManus looks good in practice. That's all we can go on heading into a game week. If he's making his kicks in practice, I mean, that's the guy you're going to go with, and he's the veteran, and he's the guy they're paying, even though, as we talked about a podcast ago, it is easier to get out from under that contract than we thought, and essentially it's a wash if you just went with Havrisik. The fear, I'm sure, from a Goody perspective, from a Packer perspective, is you've got this veteran kicker who was great last year, and in his career has been great. It was off-the-field stuff. That's the only reason McManus was available last year. I think for his career, he's like 85 or 86% on kicks. Really good numbers. The fear is that if you go to Havrisik and you cut McManus, then what happens if Havrisik, who only has the one other year in the NFL with the Rams 2 or 3 years ago where he went 15 of 20, The fear is you make that move, and then Havrisik, all of a sudden, you're not just the backup trying to fill the role for a couple of weeks. You're the guy. Then what if he misses 3 of his next 5 kicks? Then what? Then you got to go back out and try to sign McManus again, or he'll probably be gone at that point. So that's the fear, I would think, of cutting loose the veteran and going with the more unknown commodity, even though he was excellent when McManus was down for 2 weeks. But on Thursday, they asked LaFleur about it, and for the first time, LaFleur kind of said, both guys are kicking this week, and we're going to go on Sunday with whomever we think is going to give us the best chance to win. He did support McManus, but that's the first time since McManus has been back that LaFleur has not been unequivocal about McManus is our guy. We're sticking with the veteran, the guy with the pedigree, the guy who has the history, the guy who had a great year last year. That's the first time he kind of said, we're going to have a little bit of a kickoff this week, and whoever is the best during the week is going to be the kicker on Sunday. So there's a chance, I don't think it's a big one, but there's a chance that Havrisik could be your kicker on Monday, So the Packers right now are 1-point favorites. That was a 2.5-point line, but now down to 1. That feels about right. This feels like a coin flip game Monday night. Going to be frigid up at Lambeau Field. We've got some rain-snow mix coming this weekend in southeastern Wisconsin, Saturday into Sunday, and it sounds like highs on Monday are going to be still mid-30s and probably in the low 20s. Not that we're not used to that kind of stuff, but it's a little early in the year maybe. It's going to be low 20s, it looks like, overnight, and it will be pitch black, obviously, for a 7:15 kickoff this time of year. Real quick, I want to play you this before we move on to the Bucks and then get out for the day and make our picks. This was yesterday in Packer history. I think we played this at one point. I think, again, if we go back to the 2023 season where things were really bad for a while and we were just doing favorite memories of whatever opponent the Packers had coming up that weekend, we would just give you, here was a fun game from 25 years ago. 25 years ago, yesterday, was the Monday Nighter, Packers and Vikings, the He Did What game?
Favre lays it up for Freeman, and it's incomplete. Or did he make the catch at the 15? Yes. What are they going to rule it? He caught it? Touchdown! He did what?
What a line.
Ref was right on it, I think.
I think we played this before, but I love Bill Vinovich, the old school, and at that time it looked like he was in his 70s, the lead official. He's smirking and laughing as they go to replay, and then I love when they show the replay and the guys in the booth go, oh my God.
Oh, man, how
Dennis Miller.
Not intercepted?
What the hell does Rant mean?
The Packers are going wild. The crowd's going wild. I mentioned there's nothing to challenge, but they'll have to look at it upstairs. Hand tack, well, he's laughing. But let's see what it shows on the replay.
It never hit the ground. It hit the back of Antonio Freeman. Watch it, right on the left. Watch his left arm bring the ball up in the air, and he catches 6 inches off the grass.
What a catch.
Unbelievable awareness of where the ball is on his body, and he's got himself a touchdown.
Once again, we are reviewing the play on the field.
Everyone settle down.
Ball went through Dishman's hands.
He
never
caught
hit
it.
the ground.
They're trying to bring the teams back onto the field if they overturn it, but I haven't seen anything to overturn it yet.
No, it's just a great fluky play for the Pack.
That's a great summary there by Miller. Great fluky play. I remember my dad and I watching that game Monday night in the basement of our house, and, it's getting to probably be at that point overtime. It's probably like 10:30, and everybody's getting a little tired, but you want to see them win, and then seeing that in the replay, we were beside ourselves. We couldn't believe that's how that game ended. But, yeah, that was a fun memory. Yesterday, 25 years ago, Packers-Vikings, he did what? It is sort of sad. I mean, I still love Al Michaels, but if you watched, and I did because of the Broncos last night, he's 80, right? I think he's like 80 or 81. So you're not going to sound like that anymore, but it is kind of sad to hear Michaels. He just sounds so bored now. And those Thursday night games are mostly bad games because you've got two teams that just played 3 or 4 days ago that are banged up, and the games are never good. It is rare you get a Thursday game. And Amazon paid Al Michaels a boatload of money to be the Thursday night football announcer, and he just sounds bored and kind of checked out. And when I hear clips like that, it makes me reminisce about the times when you would tune in. He was the biggest voice on the biggest games, and he came up with lines like, coming up with he did what, or do you believe in miracles in the moment? Are you kidding me? Well, that was 25 years ago yesterday. All right, let's talk about the Bucks this week. What a game in Indiana. I don't know that I have the winner. Do I? Oh, I do have the winner. Here we go. This was A Bucks team taking on a Pacer team that is just down on their luck right now. You know, they went to the finals, Game 7 last year. Then Halliburton gets hurt. He's out the entire year this year. They don't sign Miles Turner. He comes to Milwaukee. So this is not the same Pacers team that has taken the Bucks out in the playoffs the last 2 years that was within a game of a title last year. I think they only have one win on the year. It was a tight game all night, tied at 115 with 17 seconds left. Giannis holding for the final shot. And I'm not going to lie, in the moment I'm watching this and he's dribbling on the perimeter and the clock's melting away and I'm thinking, come on, get to the rim. That's what you do. He's been a lot better with the mid-range jumpers than he was a lot better last year and has been pretty good this year. Even his three-point shooting has not been bad this year in a limited sample size. But Giannis, at the end of the day, he is modern-day Shaq. Back a guy down, get to the rim, get fouled, and in that situation, you only have to hit one of two free throws if you get fouled. Dunk it, do something like that. So he is just dribbling around the free throw line, and I'm thinking, are we going to settle for a mid-range jumper to try to win this? But I'll be damned if he didn't hit it.
Switched out on him. Giannis with the back down, the paint away. The
nice. Wet.
Twist heroes on the shot clock.
As the kids say.
Giannis with the game winner.
6'7"? Does that work there? I don't know. I'm just going to keep saying 6'7" until sometimes it works.
Switched out on him. Giannis with the back down, the paint away. The
nice.
It's good. Twist heroes on the shot clock.
That was the Lisa Byington call. I think my favorite call of the two, I don't know if I can load it up on the blog here quick, is the call on the Pacers broadcast because they're thinking the same thing I am. This guy's going to settle for an 18-foot fadeaway, and that is definitely not his go-to. And then when he hits it...
The screen comes, and then a Kupo 4, 3, 2, 1, fades, shoots, and hits at the bottom.
You got to be kidding me. You got to be kidding me.
I love it. And he hits it.
And then a Kupo 4, 3, 2, 1, fades, shoots, and hits at the bottom.
You got to be kidding me. You gotta be kidding me. Just a
117 to 115 win. And then he was booing the crowd because the crowd was booing Miles Turner in his return to Indiana after a 10-year career there and helping them make a run to Game 7 of the NBA Finals last year. He got booed. He got a nice video tribute, but he got booed, and he was hurt by that. They asked him postgame. You could tell, genuinely hurt by the fact that they booed him. And that angered Giannis. He was booing and thumbs down in the crowd all night because of that, and then he gave him one last boo and a double thumbs down after he hit that shot and then waved him goodbye. He was angry. So they win that game. Then you go to Toronto on Tuesday. It's a scheduled loss. I know people are going to roll their eyes at that. I talked about that on the HBL Morning Show where I know an older audience is listening. And that audience does not want to hear about a scheduled loss when an NBA player is making $55 million. You don't want to hear about, they're tired? I don't care, John. I don't care. But the reality of it is that those are difficult games in the NBA, and they just need to do away with them. Here's what has to happen. It's never going to happen. This is like having the salary cap conversation in baseball, which I also had, I think, on the HBL or the TAQ Morning Show at some point this week. But it's never going to happen. You're never going to get a salary cap in baseball. It's just never going to happen. What also is never going to happen is the NBA doing what it needs to do to have a more entertaining and impactful regular season. What it needs to do is go from 82 games down to 70 or even 65 or hell, even 60. The pandemic year, the title year for the Bucks was, I think, one of the more entertaining regular seasons because they did not start, because they couldn't start with fans. They could not start until a day or two before Christmas, which at that point, that's when a casual fan might start to turn their attention to the NBA. The casual fans do not care like I do in October or November or wherever. That's when they should start, and then they should play a 60 or 65 game schedule with no back-to-backs. I don't know why we do this as a league, because you have the Bucks battling with the Pacers on Monday night. They get a game winner. Then they've got to fly to Toronto. Okay, not the longest trip in the world, but then you have to go to another road game. Toronto was home on Sunday, had off on Monday, and then played on Tuesday. So just the energy discrepancy, you could see it right from the beginning of the game on Tuesday, that the Raptors, having been home since Saturday night, basically, and having an off day before the Tuesday game, and the Bucks playing late night Monday, flying into Toronto overnight, they just didn't have it. I mean, it was a scheduled loss. Why do we do that? Why do we do that? Play a 65-game schedule and do away with back-to-backs. You don't play back-to-backs in the playoffs, so why do it in the regular season? It is such a waste. And they got blown out on Tuesday. They were never in Toronto, and they just won in Toronto. And I think the Raptors, you've got a lot of season to go here, but I think the Raptors are going to be a bottom half playoff team in the Eastern Conference. So you already just went there and won at the end of October. The likelihood is you're not going to beat them twice in a row on their home floor, and you're definitely not going to do it when you're on a back-to-back and they've had a day off and they've been home for 4 days. So the Bucks get blown out in that game. They fall to 5-3 on the year. Now tonight, they've got an upstart Bulls team. This Bulls team, where not a lot has changed from what they were last year, they're 6-1. And it feels like their point guard, Josh Giddey, has taken a big level up, and he is now in control of that team. That is his team. They just beat the Sixers on Tuesday. So they come in 6-1. Bucks are 5-3, and tonight is game one of NBA Cup qualifying action. The Bucks are going to have that very bright green court, the special NBA Cup courts. Don't forget, the Bucks are the reigning NBA Cup champions. There's a banner, I don't know if it's still up there. They may not have that one up there anymore. But there was a 2024 NBA Cup title banner at Fiserv Forum for a while. So the Bucks and Bulls tonight should be a good one. 7 o'clock tip time at Fiserv Forum. Real quick, some Brewers stuff, and then I want to get out and make some picks. Roster moves this week. I don't think any of this was too surprising. They did not pick up the club option on Rhys Hoskins. I think we all saw the writing on the wall there. He got hurt. They bring up Andrew Vaughn. Vaughn was really good. Vaughn is under contract for next year. So there was no fit for Rhys Hoskins anymore. Unfortunate. He had, a 25 or 26 home run year one. Was off to a decent start this year, got hurt, and then got Wally pipped, basically, where Vaughn took his spot. And with Vaughn under contract at a manageable number, there was no way they were going to bring Hoskins back. So the Hoskins era is over. They also do not pick up the club option on Danny Jansen. They don't pick up the club option on William Contreras, but that doesn't mean anything. They were kind of hedging financially there with the second year of his deal. And I think he was scheduled to make $12 million, but he's still under team control for 2 more years. So the Brewers are betting there that at arbitration, they'll pay him less than $12 million. That's why they didn't pick up the option. Anytime you can squabble over $800,000 with your all-star catcher, young all-star catcher, potential franchise building block, anytime you could do that, you should definitely do that. Mark Atanasio. But that's why they declined that option. So some people, if you're not really in the minutia of baseball, I think some Brewers fans saw that they didn't pick up the club option on Hoskins, didn't pick up the club option on Contreras, and thought, are they letting William Contreras go? No. Contreras is under contract, under team control for 2 more arbitration years. He was scheduled to make, if they pick up the option, he was scheduled to make $12 million next year, but they are betting he will make less in arbitration. So that's what they're doing there. They did not pick up the option on Jose Quintana. I'm not ruling out that he could be back, but again, you've got to keep in mind, next year, you got Freddy. They picked up his $8 million option. That was a no-brainer. Now, what they do with him, we'll see. Like we talked about at the end of the year, he is now under contract for next year. That was what you had to do to make sure he was under contract for next year. He won 17 games. He's going to finish top 5 Cy Young, 200-plus strikeouts, sub-3 ERA. You're only paying him $8 million now for next year with that option picked up. Now, what do you do with him? Do you try to trade him in the offseason, get what you can for him? Do you ride out next year, see if you can make a run and lose him for nothing or a compensatory pick? If things don't go well in the first half, do you end up trading him at the deadline? Something like that. But he is now officially under contract for next year at that $8 million number. So Quintana, so you've got Peralta, Mizorowski's going to be a starter. I think Logan Henderson's going to be a starter. You get the lefty Robert Gasser back. I just don't know where the fit was for Quintana. Quintana is an excellent regular season pitcher at this stage in his career. And look, if he doesn't find a suitor and he wants to come back, he played for $5.5 million. They signed him just before the regular season began last year. Maybe he doesn't find anywhere and he comes back on a $3 million deal for 1 more year. I wouldn't hate that. You can never have enough veteran lefty arms. I just don't know if there's a spot for him in the rotation next year, but, maybe we'll see how things shake down. They don't pick up that option either. They also do not pick up, or Brandon Woodruff did not pick up, the mutual option for next year. So here's how it works for Brandon Woodruff. They did give him a qualifying offer yesterday. Woodruff had the option to play for next year. If he would have picked up his mutual option, that was for, I think, $15 million or $20 million for next year. And by not picking up that option, Woodruff is saying, I think I can make more or get a multi-year deal somewhere else instead of playing on the 1-year contract. Also, built into that is the Brewers there was a $10 million buyout. So Woodruff, when he rejected that option for next year, he's going to make $10 million. That was a part of the buyout. So he is hedging that, okay, I'm going to get $10 million from the buyout, and then I'll make more either with Milwaukee or somewhere else on a new deal. The Brewers tossed a little curveball yesterday. They tendered him an offer. So by tendering him an offer, the tender offer is for $22 million for next year. So that means with the $10 million they have to pay him for the buyout, they would then tack on 22 to that for his contract for next year. So now here's the question for Brandon Woodruff. Does Brandon Woodruff think that he can make more on the open market on a multi-year deal than essentially getting a one-year contract for $32 million? Because he's going to get the $10 million because he declined the mutual option, and then he would make the $22 million on the tendered offer heading into next year. So basically it's a one-year, $32 million offer for Woodruff. He has to figure out whether or not he can get a 2 or 3 year deal somewhere or if that's going to be his best option. If he doesn't take that because they tendered him an offer, the Brewers would get a draft pick back if he doesn't come back. So it's an interesting little play here with Woodruff, who I think looked pretty good when he was healthy. That's always the biggest part for Woodruff. Is he going to be healthy? Can he pitch 30 games for you next year? Can he be healthy at the right time of year when you're getting toward the playoffs? Because that was, again, a massive blow to this team heading into the playoffs, not having him as an option. But it's an interesting little cat and mouse game happening there as to whether or not Woodruff thinks he can get a better deal on a multi-year deal or a one-year deal. He's not going to get better than 1 year. If it's a one-year deal, he's not getting more than $32 million anywhere. So he has to figure out whether or not he has a market for a multi-year deal somewhere else. I think he's going to be back. I don't know. 1 year, $32 million? That's a pretty good chunk of change if you only make 15 starts. That's a hell of a payday. But they did do that yesterday. That, I think, concluded all of the moves they made. Yeah, they picked up Peralta's option. Then Danny Jansen walks away, Quintana walks away, Hoskins walks away, Woodruff declined his mutual option, then they tender him an offer. I think that was everything. Ricky Weeks is not going to be the associate head coach anymore. He is moving up to the front office as, I think, a special assistant to the regional manager. I think that's essentially what it is. I think he's a special assistant to the scouting department. I think Pat Murphy just outlasted Ricky Weeks there. Remember when they hired Murph after Council left, they brought in Ricky as his bench coach, and it felt to me, and you could even go back into the podcast archives here, it felt to me like he was then the manager in waiting, like, okay, we're going to give Murphy the 2-year deal. He's the perfect buffer after Council, and then after 2 years, Ricky's going to be the guy. Well, Pat Murphy goes out there, wins 93 games in year 1, wins 97 games, a franchise record in year 2, wins a playoff series against Council and the Cubs before the disaster in the NLCS, and now he's the guy. And so I don't know that, if Murphy, he's not young, but he feels like he's got probably 2, 3, 4 years left if he wants them. And Ricky's looking around and saying, well, I don't know if I want to wait around for that. So he is now moving up to the front office. But kind of interesting that initially they hire Murphy on a 2-year deal. Feels like he's a good buffer. He's keeping the seat warm for Ricky, but then he was so good that he's the guy now moving forward. But a couple of Brewers moves here to talk about at the end of the week. All right, let's make some picks.
Here comes the money.
Here we go. Money talk.
Here comes the money.
Never tell me the odds. If someone gives you 10,000 to 1 on anything, you take it.
That's a cool G, Daddy-O. Now you gotta let it ride.
All right, we'll make this quick. We went 2-3. We lost the over on Monday night with the Cowboys and Cardinals, so we are an even Steven. You know who you are? Even Steven. We are 16-16 on the year. I've got 4. I'm taking the Bears at home, -4.5 on Sunday. Thank God I didn't. I was going to bet on the Broncos last night as the -10-point spread. Thank God I didn't do that. But I am taking the Bears at home. Giants are in Chicago. I regret to inform you, I think the Bears are maybe going to be a solid team this year. I mean, they're going to be in that 8-9 win range, threatening for a playoff spot. They're at home. Jackson Dart has been great as a rookie quarterback for the Giants, but no Cam Scatabo anymore. They don't have that offensive punch. It feels like coming off of a big road win. Bears are 5-3. They've got some enthusiasm and some momentum behind them now. I will take them -4.5 at home against the G-Men, as Berman would say. I am taking the Buccaneers -2.5 at home against the Patriots. Now, this serves a couple of purposes. Number one, I've got the Baker Mayfield future MVP bet. That is not looking as good as it did when I laid it down. So I need a marquee win and a big game from Baker. I also have the future bet on the Bills to win the AFC East. They are right now a half game behind the Patriots, and they, at the moment, don't have the head-to-head. They have one matchup remaining this year. But I want the Patriots to lose, and I want a good game for Baker and for the Buccaneers to win. So I'm taking the Bucs at home. They're getting healthier, coming off of a bye. I think Godwin's back. I think Mike Evans will be back for them too. Buccaneers are 2.5-point home favorites, noon kickoff on Sunday against the Patriots. I am taking the Jaguars on the road in Houston. That Houston to win the AFC South bet, that ship has sailed, I think. The Colts did lose, but now they pick up Sauce Gardner. They've got a very winnable game, although it's in Europe. The Europe game this week is in Berlin. It is Falcons and Colts at 8:30 in the morning on Sunday. I think the Colts probably win that, although sometimes at those Europe games and the early starts and the travel, you never know. But it doesn't feel like the Texans are going to be in that conversation anymore to win their division. And no C.J. Stroud, although he has not been great. It is not going to be C.J. Stroud on Sunday. Jaguars are 5-3, and they've been a little frisky under Liam Cohen, so they are -1.5. I'll take them on the road. And then I have one college game for you. I am taking Alabama. The first college football playoff rankings came out. Alabama is number 4, and Ohio State number 1. Alabama -9.5 at home against LSU. LSU now unranked. Brian Kelly was fired. LSU paid a $50 million buyout to get past Brian Kelly. The Badgers won't pay $25 to get out from under Luke Fickell. And Kelly, comparatively, wasn't even that bad. I mean, didn't live up to the championship, national championship 11-12 win standard at LSU, but he was winning 8-9 games a year. But without Kelly and on the road and Alabama back in the national title picture, I will take Alabama at home -9.5 on Saturday night. Jags -1.5 at Houston. Bucks -2.5 at home. Bears -4.5 at home. That'll do it for us here on your Friday morning. When we come back on Monday, we'll get her set up. Monday Night Football. Reigning champion Eagles at Lambeau Field. We'll recap the Badger weekend. Maybe they'll shock us. I'll give you the recap of the Boo at a Bar tour. We'll talk about whatever happens for the Bucks this weekend. Coming back Monday morning. Have a happy, safe weekend. We'll chat with you then.